T minus 30 seconds.
DeAndre Hopkins! Justin Jefferson, have a day! What a catch! C.D. Lamb! Only this guy, I think. I mean, maybe I'm trying to think of somebody else.
And he hurdles his way into the end zone. Touchdown.
I was scared for the interception by Kenny Moore.
2, 1, 0.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into the final drive. It's your boy Josh Frey-Sam here once again. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed another week of NFL football. This is there's not really much to say about this. There's always something to say, but this was a really weird week in the NFL, and ready to chop it up. This is a really special episode this week, of course, being that we have a really great guest coming in, Jen Mack of the Pack-A-Day podcast, content creator for all things Packers. Those of you who've been watching the show know that I am a diehard Packers fan, so this is a big time guest for me to bring in. And also, as my guest co-host today, I have the one and only Jesse Cornega, my boy, joining us to break down the other games that happened this week. So without further ado, let me bring in my guy here. Jesse, what's shaking, baby? Oh, hold up. You're on mute.
Another beautiful day of football just surpassed us. Learned a little bit more about every team.
Yes, sir.
And a lot more questions this week than a few of the weeks past. There's some really big games. I'm sure we're going to get into some upsets, some top teams dethroned.
Yes, sir. Everybody's excited to see you, man. Shout out Nolan. Always commenting, man. Always commenting, man. We got a few games to break down right before we get to Jen coming in here, breaking down that Chiefs and Packers game, that so exciting Chiefs and Packers game, 13-7 finish. But a lot to talk about, obviously, in that game. Beforehand, let's get to the Sunday night football game, Tennessee, LA. This one was kind of expecting it to be a little bit closer. Tennessee really made a statement here tonight with their defense. Simmons was by far the player of the game. Jalen Ramsey obviously was showing out today as well, making plays. The Titans are the first AFC team to 7 wins, which is something that I did not think that I'd be saying if you had asked me week 2 or week 3 in this season. There's no chance. I am on record saying that I am very concerned about the Tennessee Titans, but without Derrick Henry, they are showing that they are truly a force once again to be reckoned with this season. Give us your thoughts, man, on Sunday Night Football here. What were your thoughts through this game, and what do you think of the Stars? Did they come out? Did they shine bright enough for you?
Yeah, going into the game, I was kind of leaning more on the Rams side of things, so I was surprised with how the game played out. I thought Tennessee, all 3 phases, really came to play today on the road, West Coast. I feel like all of Tennessee's, for the last 5 weeks, they've been tough competition or division games, and they've just been able to find ways to win. Regardless of circumstance, we've seen them come from behind miraculously a couple times this year, and this was the first real Titans game I watched, and they left their imprint on the game from start to finish. Huge second quarter, turning the ball over, scoring off turnovers, pick 6, and almost won the game with that huge second that they had. And
Yeah, man, this was kind of a rout from the Tennessee Titans defensive standpoint. And this is a team that I talked about last week, Tennessee, and how they've had kind of this renaissance at defense. And since over the past couple of seasons, we've seen the Tennessee Titans, since Ryan Tannehill's come in, he has really rejuvenated this offense. Obviously, Tennessee Titans have been one of the more efficient offenses in football over the past couple of seasons since Tannehill's gotten there. But they keep falling short every single year. And really, A lot of it has to do with their defense. It's kind of been an Achilles heel of them. They haven't been able to get pressure on the quarterback. And since a couple seasons ago, when they kind of moved on from a couple of their veterans, I'm now forgetting Adoree Jackson, for example, moving on from him, a couple of their veterans. They're going through this youth movement on the back end, of course, except for Kevin Byard and Kenny Vaccaro. But their corners, they are young, they're tenacious, obviously, but they're just so raw still, and they're getting abused over the past couple of years. So now the Titans go out, they draft some more guys. They are a year more experienced. They add Bud Dupree to this lineup, as I mentioned last week. Now they're getting after the quarterback. They got after Matthew Stafford 5 times today, pressured him a bunch. They're near the top of the NFL in pressures per game. They're near the top of the NFL in sacks per game. So this is a team that's getting after the quarterback. And as you and I know, it's not all about the sacks. It's about the pressures, big time. I mean, Tennessee, man, I think like this is maybe something I was going to say for the end of the episode, but Tennessee, they have the best record in the AFC. Are they the best team in the AFC in your eyes?
It's pretty hard to dispute that, considering, like you said, them having a 7-2, the best record in the AFC, and to get that record, they've pretty much gone through anyone we could, fathom being their competition. Like they have statement wins over the Bills and the Chiefs, and yeah, so it's, I mean, outside of that, yeah, they got statement wins against like the biggest teams in the AFC, and after what they did to one of the best teams out in the NFC tonight on the road, I think you'd have to probably give it to them.
Yeah, no doubt. And Jeffrey Simmons, I tweeted this out on my own personal account, but Jeffrey Simmons, just a quick reminder to everybody. I mean, this guy has been kind of a steal of sorts for the Tennessee Titans. If you look back to the 2019 draft, Jeffrey Simmons was a top 10 consensus pick, a top 10 talent coming into the draft. Of course, then he tore his ACL while training for the draft. And then he also had some off the field concerns as well. So that kind of led to his slide in the draft. But then the Tennessee Titans saw him available there at 19th overall. They go and pick him up, and he obviously showed why he was considered to be a top 10 consensus pick. Jalen Ramsey just once again today showed on numerous occasions why he is a Hall of Famer in my eyes, or will be. Maybe he is not quite a Hall of Famer at this very moment, but he will certainly be if he continues on this trajectory. I don't think I have anything more to say about this game, man. Let's go on to your Vegas and your Vegas Raiders, man. Let's talk about your boys, because I'm sure you got a lot to say on it. We'll bring in Jen in about 7 minutes time here. You want to know what? One thing I did want to say actually before we get to the Vegas game, and I think you'll agree with this. This is by far the weirdest week in the NFL, I think, so far this season. Like, seriously, we're talking like I know that this is a league full of parity, right? Each and every single week. That's why the term any given Sunday exists in this league, right? We're talking Atlanta beats New Orleans. Denver absolutely rolls Dallas today. Jacksonville holds off Buffalo, holds them to 6 points and edges them in a 9-6 victory. I hope you bet the underdogs today. 9 out of 12 dogs covered in today's. Actually, if you count the Titans, 10 out of 13 dogs covered in today's games. What was your biggest surprise before we get to the Vegas game? What was your biggest surprise of Week 9?
Off the top of my head, I'm definitely gonna have to say that Jaguars victory. That surprised me the most. I just thought their team dynamic was in flux. They're playing one of the better teams in the AFC, and came and held them to 6 points, a 9-6 victory, a gritty win. And the style of game that they played and the team they beat, you asked me that yesterday. No. Yeah, man. This is like, I have no idea what to say with that. And like, that's why it's almost led to like this, like where I'm kind of preparing for this episode, this show tonight. And I'm with all these different games. And yes, there's so much to talk about, but yet what there is to talk about is with a lot of these teams that we're not really considering to be contenders in any way, shape, or form. So it's kind of like, yeah, we could talk about them, but
that's not what everybody wants to hear about, right? All the storylines lie with all the big favorites and the contenders. But with that being said, man, let's go to your Vegas Raiders, who I think a couple people might have had as contenders at some point in the season. Maybe they still do. They lost 23-16. This was a trap game for the Raiders, man. They fell into the trap today. Las Vegas Raiders now 0-5 since 2017, coming off of the bye. Turnovers was a key issue here. Derek Carr turned the ball over twice in comparison to the Giants. 0 turnovers. Giants rushed the ball 31 times compared to just 20 passes. So the game plan was run the ball down the Raiders' throat. They did that fairly successfully. Las Vegas Raiders kind of went against the John Gruden game plan that we've seen in terms of running the ball down other people's throats. 20 rushes to 46 passes in this game. I'll let you take over here, man. Give us your thoughts. You being a Las Vegas Raiders fan, I know you're a very analytical, deliberate thinker. What was your breakdown, your recap of this game?
Well, when I was done watching it, there was a 4-letter word that I exploded profusely. But outside of that, it was a rough day in Raider land, like you said, 0-5 coming off the bye. I didn't think the team today came out flat per se, but execution was lacking. Offensively, 1 for 5 in the red zone, getting touchdowns, and ultimately, I think that was like one of the biggest detriments to us winning this game. The Derek Carr pick 6, obviously losing by 7 points, throwing a pick 6, that's really tough. I thought today was Derek Carr's worst game of the season by far. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, the costly pick 6 that we were talking about. Also, issues holding the ball in the pocket, fumbling later on in the game. But to your point, I think people are starting to see the weakness in this Las Vegas defense. Yes, we've upgraded the pass rush, and our front 4 is very heavily focused on just getting back to the passer, disrupting the passer by any means necessary. And teams are starting to take heed of that and just try to run it right down our line. It's getting up the field so quick, it's easy to run by them. And I think we're ranked 30th in rushing defense this year. And from all of our victories, all of our losses so far this year, that's been a common denominator, is just getting manhandled on the defensive side of the ball, trying to defend the run. Outside of that, like I said, red zone offense was a huge struggle. This is something that's come up with this team several times throughout the past couple of years. It's been an issue. And today I thought it really cost us not being able to secure touchdowns when we were in the red zone.
Okay, well, so here's the Las Vegas Raiders remaining schedule here. Okay, and let's wrap up this analysis of this game before we bring in Jen here. Remaining schedule, and it's not easy. The Raiders have probably one of the more difficult schedules actually in the NFL this year as a whole. At least it looked that way in the preseason. It still kind of looks that way. So it's not easy here. Even though 5 of their last 9 games are at home. They go Kansas City, Cincinnati, Dallas, Washington football team, Kansas City again, Cleveland, Denver, Indianapolis, Chargers. Jesse, how many wins do you think the Raiders end this season with?
No, it's a tough slate. I think sitting at 5-3, I think we still finish with 11 coming rounding 11. Up. Yeah, 11.
Okay, and that would probably leave you guys in a. Well, I would say 11 wins probably wins the AFC West. I would say. I would think.
With the resurgence of Kansas City the past 2 weeks, which I'm sure we'll get into in the next segment here, but I think that Week 17 game versus the Chargers is going to honestly be for the division. So, yeah, hopefully we can make it there with something to play for Week 17 and take it all. But
yeah, man, let's bring in Jen here. This is a special guest, like I mentioned, for me. Obviously, her being covering my Green Bay Packers, our Green Bay Packers here tonight. So let's bring in from the Pack a Day podcast and a bunch of different types of content creation avenues. Jen Mack. Jen, how are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I mean, despite the loss, I'm actually feeling pretty good. You know, it's kind of one of those losses that doesn't crush your soul like Week 1 did. So it could be worse, that's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. 13-7. I'm actually coming out of this game. I don't know about you, Jim, but I'm coming out of this game a little bit optimistic, honestly. The Packers defense looked phenomenal, especially against Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense that obviously is been notoriously this season, at least it's been really struggling to move the ball. A lot of teams have seemingly figured out this team, quote unquote. The biggest story really does lie with the Chiefs in this game, me personally. It's not the Packers. Really, Jordan Love obviously was getting thrusted into this position. We can get into him here, but the Chiefs were averaging 3.8 yards per play. And really at the end of the day, as it has been for the past couple of seasons now here for the Packers, it's been special teams was really the story of this game. Yep. One missed field goal, one blocked field goal, two muff punts, if you want to call it. One was a muff, for sure muff. The other one was kind of like a Malik Taylor coming off his foot there. And I don't know if, I guess we'll call it a muff. But Jordan Love, 19 for 34, $196, one tug and one pick. Jen, give us your report card off just kind of, I know it's still very fresh, but what's your kind of your grade of Jordan Love off in this game?
Yeah, I think, I'd kind of give him an average grade. I think all things considered, he made bad plays, of course, but he also made some good plays and he showed some potential. I think the offensive line didn't really give him the help that he needed, especially being a first-time starter. It didn't look like the offensive line that we have seen protecting Rodgers for the last 8 weeks. So that was a little frustrating, especially because he kind of needs that extra time to get familiar with what's going on and finding guys. So I think considering that, he did really well under the pressure. One interception, but it was kind of a 50-50 ball where Adams might have been able to get that. But I think it was Snead just made a really good play. So there's just a lot of factors that really went into this game. And you could tell it looked like there were some nerves early on, but as he continued to play each drive, he began to look a little bit more comfortable. I know that the booth was kind of saying maybe different things, like he just looked very uncomfortable, but I think it's natural to look like that when you have like less than a second to try and get rid of the ball because they're blitzing every play. So they really threw everything at Jordan Love. And I think considering that Chiefs front seven, I think he did really well under that pressure. So, he did have 23 yards rushing, I believe it was. So he was relentless, which I loved. He scrambled a lot. He only took one sack despite all that pressure. So he was really going out there doing everything that he possibly could. And I know there were a lot of balls that were off target and stuff like that, but those are growing pains that hopefully as he continues to play more, he'll kind of grow out of and learn how to work around that adversity on the field when there's a play not open and he's looking somewhere else. So I think, it wasn't a horrible outing. I know there's a lot of people who immediately want to write him off because they were expecting him to come out and look like Aaron Rodgers, which those are unrealistic expectations. It wasn't only him that needed to come out and perform today. I think that there was a good mix in the beginning between him and the running game, and then that kind of fell off a little bit there in the middle. So I think all things considered, I was pretty pleased with what I saw from Jordan Love. A lot of flukes, but also a lot of potential.
I like that analysis. Jesse, I don't know if you have a question for Jen. I have a bunch for her, but do you have one?
I know you can start it off.
Okay, I'll go. I actually have a question for both of you guys. This is actually, it kind of ties to the Packers. I will tie it to the Packers, but it's a question for both of you guys. And this is one that I've really, me being Jesse, that I'm an aspiring sportscaster, but obviously I will be a journalist first and foremost. And once I get to sports journalism as a profession, I want to ask this question to some of the coaches. And I'm going to ask you guys this question first, though. I know the box score is obviously not always indicative of what the score is, right? It's called box score scouting for a reason, right? You probably shouldn't rely on it, but I do feel that there are some stats that are indicative of the outcome oftentimes, and I want to know what kind of stats you guys look at. For me personally, for example, I look at the turnover battle. The ball is something that Matt LaFleur always stresses. Jen, you know that very well. We lost the ball 2-0 today. Okay. Turned the ball over twice. Kansas City Chiefs turned over none. Third down efficiency, 16%. We went 2 for 12 on third down. And then finally, one big one that I look at is red zone efficiency. We on 0 for 1 today in the red zone. Really was 1 and 2 because the touchdown to Alan Lazard was like right on the 20. I guess they didn't count that as a red zone touchdown. Anyways, but I want to know, like, and Jesse, I'll start with you here. Are there specific stats that you look at in the box score that oftentimes that you feel are indicative of the final score? Or is the box score just something that you just completely steer clear
of? No, I think you touched on most of them. Turnover margin, like you said, is the first thing I look at. Red zone efficiency. Penalties is another one I like to look at. For the Sunday nighter, for example, I thought that was a pretty big reason why the Rams were down so early. I think they had 11 penalties to Tennessee's 3 tonight. So that's another thing I look at. But I think you covered a lot of the bases I like to look for when gauging what had happened in the game.
So, Jen?
Yeah, you guys kind of touched on, the big ones. I also like to look at plays for loss and just kind of see how many negative yards people get. But I do also love to look at running backs and see how many yards they're averaging per carry, depending on what kind of game it is. Maybe you're kind of curious and seeing, okay, maybe they fell off the run game, and then you go back and look and it's like, oh, that's because they're not getting anywhere. So I love to look at that too and kind of see kind of the production there to see if that's kind of skewing with the game plan.
I agree with you. Okay, Jen, let's go back to the Packers here. Were you in Green Bay for this? Were you in Green Bay like during the preseason whatsoever, like during training camp and stuff like that?
I did make it out to the Texans preseason game, so that's the only time I've been out to Lambeau this year so far.
Okay, that is exciting. What was the overall feeling? I'm curious. What was the overall feeling? Did you feel a vibe while you're in Green Bay in terms of like with the whole entire Aaron Rodgers situation going on at the time? And this kind of ties in with my next question. Feel free to answer that. But do you think Aaron Rodgers comes back next season?
Yeah, so to kind of answer the first part of that question, the Texans game, I think that was the first preseason game of the year. And I had not been to Lambeau since the Seahawks game in the playoffs a few years ago. So there's a lot of time between just with all the COVID stuff and not being able to go there. So it had been a long, long time since I had sat in those bleachers. So even though it was preseason, the vibe is still there. It's packed. Everybody's just excited for football again. And I used to live in Green Bay. I went to school out there. So I was out there for 4 years. I know how it works. And I do love the environment. It doesn't matter kind of what game's going on. Everybody shows up, everybody tailgates, parties, they get ready for it. Football is football in Green Bay. But yeah, especially following all the Aaron Rodgers stuff, everything had finally de-escalated by preseason, and it was just kind of exciting to see him out on the field, even though it's preseason. He's not suited up or anything like that. But obviously it's been a roller coaster since April for Packers fans, and here we are again, kind of in the middle of a little drama. I wouldn't call it drama, just a lot of, in the center of a lot of talk. But yeah, I do think that just kind of the way things have been going and the vibe and the fun and just kind of the way that he is perceiving things, it kind of feels like this isn't a guy who is ready to leave. And it's not just him, it's the team. And it sounds like he's had really good communication with Gutekunst. So there's a lot of signs that are pointing to maybe this isn't the last season with him. And, today's kind of a taste of what it would look like without him. And I think that a lot of us just aren't ready to give up an MVP caliber quarterback. Nothing against Jordan Love, first game. I'm not going to ride him on that or anything. It's kind of expected, but I do think that Rodgers is still playing at that high level where if you can keep him and if he wants to stay, I think that's the way you have to go. And I haven't seen any signs that kind of show that he was on the way out. But I mean, who knows what conversations are happening with everything that's kind of happened throughout the last week. But it sounds like a lot of people within the building already knew the situation. It's just kind of more nationally heard now. So I don't know. I don't think that what's happening right now will impact where he plays next season.
Yeah, that's very well put. And Jesse's sitting here listening. He's a Vegas Raiders fan, so he is very much also in the thick of all sorts
Talk
of
about news.
Yeah, you want to talk about
Yeah,
news? Yeah,
that's like far more serious news, but
it is. It is far more serious news. Absolutely, Jesse. Go ahead if you have something to ask.
Yeah, kind of an obscure question for you guys. I know before the bye week, when the Raiders were playing the Eagles right before game time, Darren Waller was depicted out of the game, and then that Vegas swung by about 1.5 points when he was out of the game. So how many points do you think Aaron Rodgers is worth to the Packers every week in terms of like Vegas spread?
in terms of see, I'm not a betting person, so that's a tough one for me to answer just because people have tried to explain spread and money line and like all this stuff to me. So it does sound like even with Devontae going out last week, the spread drastically changed. So I can only imagine that, I don't know number wise, but he probably sways it much more. You know, Devontae Adams being a receiver and swaying it that much, I can only imagine what Rodgers does with those numbers.
Yeah,
That's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, I can't remember what the Packers what the line opened up at this week, but I just know that it ended, I think, at 7.5 or something like that. And yeah, Rodgers like swayed it like 6-7 points or something like ridiculous or something. It was ridiculous. And honestly, I think we saw why, because today it was, I mean, it woulda, coulda, shoulda, if is the easy answer here. But like, I mean, still the way that the Chiefs played today and the way the Packers defense more so played today, it was a matter of if Aaron Rodgers is there at quarterback, it's very easy to sit here and say that the Packers win that game by a mile. Really, they're running away with that game. Really, and really with the field goals that were missed and things of that nature, all the different mistakes that happened in this game. I mean, this should have been a tie game. Like that final drive for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs could have went very differently in terms of whether they're trying to drive for a game-winning field goal at the very least, or maybe even they are losing at that point and they are driving to try and just stay alive at that point. Jen, you've been really gracious with your, really generous, pardon me, with your time. Can you just provide us one last thing here? Who's a player that you think Packers fan, or not even Packers fans, fans in general, need to keep an eye on or keep their ears out for when it comes to the Packers? Who's that next guy up you think that's ready to kind of explode?
Well, I think somebody who, especially now that he's back, MVS, you have to keep a lot of eyes on him because, you know, his absence also, it adds more pressure onto Adams because with his absence, you know, he's got all the speed and he is somebody who I know last few years he'll have those big drops and then people get really upset with him. So I think that this was kind of what I felt like was kind of supposed to be that big MVS redemption season. And then, of course, the injury occurs. But now that he's back, you know, he caught 2 balls tonight. And it, you know, with Jordan Love, he's just kind of feeling things out. So MVS, I'm really excited for him to be back. And he really does add a lot more to this offense than I think people outside of those who watch the Packers understand. He's got a lot of great speed, and when he can utilize that speed and also catch the ball, which he has become more consistent in doing, that makes him a huge threat. And then having him match up with Adams, that's also huge. And then you add in a little Lazard blocking. I think that people kind of focus a lot of their attention on Devontae Adams, which rightfully so. He's the best receiver in the league, and in my opinion, and I think many others. But you kind of also have to remember MVS is there, and then Lazard does a lot of the dirty work. So watching the other guys in that receiving room, and then also with Tonyan being out, I think DeGuara is going to be somebody who we kind of keep an eye out on too, because it's kind of next man up, and it seems like he's going to be that guy because he filled that role a little bit today.
Yeah, and yeah, I'll go off that as well with Josiah DeGuara as a guy for me. I absolutely think now that Robert Tonyan is down for the year, I think that's kind of a guy who by the end of the year now, hopefully, depending on how we utilize him, he obviously has great ability to catch the ball, get upfield, hopefully turn into maybe more of a vertical threat. Of course, Robert Tonyan, maybe his future is actually up in the air as well going into the offseason with the Green Bay Packers. I personally think it would be smartest for him to re-sign with the Packers. Familiar place for him. Maybe he can build his his value once again coming off of injury and then maybe hit free agency in 2023. But that's my own personal take. But then also a guy that absolutely nobody knows outside of probably Packers land is TJ Slayton. I think that TJ Slayton's a guy who I don't know how much run he's going to get for the rest of the season. But just like with, I don't know, we'll see what Kenny Clark's status is and things of that nature. But TJ Slayton is an absolute monstrosity of a human being. And people are, I hope, going to find out very well about who he is going forward. Jen, last thing before I let you go, can you give us a Super Bowl prediction and a hot take for the Packers, a bold prediction for the Packers to finish the season?
Well, going into the season, I had the hopeful Packers-Bills Super Bowl that I feel like we were robbed of last year. So I was still hopeful of that, but it looks like, Bills are kind of going down in stock right now. Still hopeful for that. So that's kind of where I'd like to see it. I don't need another Tom Brady Super Bowl. I don't see this Chiefs team making a Super Bowl run. So I still am really hopeful for that Packers-Bills Super Bowl. And I mean, things, with the Cardinals, they won, but Rams losing, that helps the Packers too. So despite losing this game, they're still in really good position, kind of at this halfway point in the season. So I think that there is a chance for kind of that home field advantage through the playoffs. And I think that kind of the hot take would be to, by playoff time, have Zadarius and Jair back and then really kind of have your staple defense in there for that playoff run, because hopefully Bakhtiari will be back soon. But if you can really build up that defense with your star players, which for them to be able to do what they're doing without so many other guys, you lose Kenny, you lose Stokes, you haven't had Jair or Zadarius. So I think the hot take would be to get those guys back and then things just really start to roll on this defense, which would be amazing. And then finally get over that NFC Championship game hump and back to the Super Bowl.
Please,
we can only hope.
I'm right there with you, Jen. Jen, thank you very, very much for your time tonight. Really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate chopping up about the Packers with you. And hopefully we can have you on again on the show in the future.
For sure. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
Okay, take care.
See ya.
That was awesome, man. Jen was the first woman here on the Final Drive. She's a pioneer. Okay, as far as the Final Drive is concerned. Hopefully we have more women on here as the show continues to evolve.
Diverse, baby.
We're keeping it diverse here, man. We've got the color here already. We got the women now as well. Okay, it's a beautiful thing here happening here at the Final Drive. Okay, let's go on to this Minnesota Baltimore game, man. We got a couple more games just to break down real quick. Okay, we'll get out of here. Okay, we'll get out of here for the night. Minnesota, Baltimore, probably the most exciting as far as this final score wise in today. But I'll be honest, this was kind of an ugly game as far as I was concerned. It really, Lamar Jackson, 2+ turnovers in 4 games this year now. In saying that, he also threw for 3 touchdown passes and rushed for over 120 yards. So there's your give and your take there with Lamar Jackson. But the Vikings here, Jesse, and this is kind of where I wanted to go with this. Vikings lost another 1-score game. You look at the records here, and I don't really have the stats in front of me in terms of, what the average, what you need in terms of 1-score game records in order to make the playoffs and whatnot, or the percentage of teams that have a winning record. But at the same time, the Vikings here, they are leaving this game with a 3-5 record. Okay. They are 2-5 in 1-score games this year. The Ravens are leaving this game 6-2. Okay. They are at one of the best records in the AFC. They are 4-1 in 1-score games this season. We want to just talk about maybe how important that is, 1-score games in the NFL, because there is clearly a correlation here with these two teams in terms of how well or how poorly they do in 1-score games.
Yeah, I think the 1-score game thing is what makes or breaks teams, especially if you're just a fringe playoff team. I always like to look at teams that failed in 1-score games the year before and then see if they've made any additions that might, if they flip that script, then they're all of a sudden a contender the next year. But yeah, for Minnesota this year, it's like every game I've watched is just heartbreak as a Minnesota fan. Like watching their games was like watching the news as a Raiders fan this week, but it was the actual football product. So,
that's tough.
It is tough. It's really tough. And I feel like the more I watch this Minnesota team this year, I feel like the writing's almost on the wall for that coaching staff, Mike Zimmer. As much as I love him, great defensive mind, I just feel like this has almost been the story for this Vikings team the past few years with Kirk Cousins at the helm. And I think it's the more and more that these one where one, they blow leads in a game, or two, that they lose in a heartbreaking fashion at the end when they have a chance to win it. If that continues to happen this year, I think it's time for some turnover in Minnesota. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, instead of heartbreaking losses, we have the cardiac kids, the Baltimore Ravens, who just aren't faced by any deficit this year, whether they're at home, on the road. Very resilient team. And Lamar Jackson, I think, even with all the turnover trouble he's had, especially with the injury to Kyler Murray, I think he still has an outside shot at taking home the MVP. Baltimore had over 500 yards of total offense today, and he accounted for 386 of those. That's been the story for them all season, rotating cast at running back, receiver rooms. Guys miss games. Rashad Bateman. Lamar Jackson he's something special, and this Baltimore team clearly believes, and there's just something about them in these one-score games. You just what's coming. If it's coming down to the wire, I'd put my money on Lamar.
Yeah. And I mean, there's something, because I've been a hater of the Baltimore Ravens this season. I'm very explicitly just been not a fan of the Raiders in terms of just them coming down to these one-score games. But at the same time, as I have said in the past, there is something to be said. There's a level of respect that you need to have for the Baltimore Ravens, regardless of your feeling toward them. There is a level of respect you got to have with how they have been pulling off these one-score victories. And they end up being one-score victories. But like you said, to your point, this is a team, they're just coming back. They have slow starts maybe in the first half, and they end up just somehow, some way clawing their way back to a game-winning Justin Tucker field goal. And it's just, and it's awesome to have that guy. You want to know what? Actually, on that note, let me ask you something. And this is something that I heard. I know that you're a big listener of Move the Sticks, as I am, but I don't know if you heard this. Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks talking about, would you trade a first-round pick for Justin Tucker? Would you?
That's tough. That's going to be me, dog.
If you are a contending team, okay, let's say you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, okay, you know that you have high hopes of making it to the Super Bowl. You know that you are likely going to be picking in the high 20s, okay, at the very least. And your last missing piece, you got this defense locked up. Let's say you got the offense ready to rock. Kicker's your only missing piece. Are you flipping a first-round pick for your kicker?
I wouldn't.
For Justin Tucker.
I wouldn't even do that in Madden, bro.
for Justin Tucker specifically, not just any kicker, Justin Tucker.
I don't think there's a precedent for trading a first-round pick for a kicker, but. If there was a kicker that would be deserving of a first round pick, obviously he'd make it, but he'd make that list. I don't think there's any kicker that's worth it. Like how many kickers have been drafted in the first round in the 100 years of the NFL? 2, 1?
I actually don't even know. Yeah, not many.
I'm pretty firm believer that if there was kickers drafted in the first round, the Raiders were a part of that like multiple times. I feel like Sebastian Janikowski might have been one of those.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, well, I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean, I think it's worth some sort of a debate at the very least, trading for Justin Tucker. I mean, if that's your if it's coming down to it, you got to win the Super Bowl. Okay, like we're talking about, right? Like, I mean, if we're talking,
Destroying still on the streets without a contract, so that got to go giving up assets to get a good kicker prospect.
That's fair enough, man. Well, on that, okay, so in this game, Baltimore did dominate the time possession, 46 to 23 minutes. That was a big one. Mike Zimmer, I had him as a hot seat candidate at some point in this season a couple weeks ago, and now I'm kind of starting to think, like, with these close games, I mean, you got to start thinking like maybe this is going to catch up eventually. And I got a ton of respect for Mike Zimmer as a defensive mind in the NFL. But do you think Mike Zimmer survives this season? And if he does survive the season, do you think he's back as the Vikings head coach next season?
I think the only way for him to survive would probably be some playoff victories. And I just don't think from watching this team, I don't think they have it in them to even make it to the playoffs the way they collapse in a lot of these games. So I think he's probably maybe going to be taking a year off next year, finding a nice defensive coordinator job somewhere in the leagues. I know he get picked up right away if he's available.
No question about it. Okay, let's go on to Los Angeles Chargers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I know you tuned into this game. Justin Herbert had an MVP type performance, 32 for 38, 356 through the air, 2 tugs, no picks, 1 rushing tug as well. Wow. Justin Herbert, man. Did I say Justin Tucker? I meant to say Justin. I don't know if I said Justin Tucker there. I'm still on the kicker talk. Anyways, Justin Herbert, 27-24. They scuzzed out this victory here. Thoughts on this game, Jesse? I did not watch this game personally, but I know you did. What were your thoughts on this game?
Back and forth battle, drive for drive, especially late in the game. Is honestly who had the ball last won the game. I took more from the LA Chargers side of things. Yeah, Justin Herbert played on fire today. It seemed like he couldn't miss out there. Even when he had that rushing touchdown, just his decisiveness and moving towards that end zone, he was in a zone today. And being in his division, when I see him like that, when I see him compete and perform like that, it's scary because he's had his off weeks, obviously, with last week, but bounce back week for the reigning rookie of the year. And from Philly's perspective, there's just something about the way this offense is ran. It is so unique from the rest of the NFL. Even teams.
That's one way to put it.
Even teams with running quarterbacks, like I haven't seen like the screen game. I think Jalen Hurts only threw 17 passes, and as crazy as that is, like they were still in this game, and they just rely on him to consistently move the chains with his legs. It's
I can't stand this team. Okay, keep going.
and I mean they were in this game, but like a lot of the points that they've scored this year, it's like they're the garbage time kings. But it's crazy to me, like this Philadelphia team, it's like they're almost so far from contending, but they're at the same time they're just so close. And it's there's a lot of questions on this team, but for some reason I think there's the makings of something good there.
Really? Okay. And that's interesting. So like I'm been on since Carson Wentz left. I've been full bore. Philadelphia is in the rebuild here. Like, and I know that their roster makeup wouldn't actually necessarily suggest that they are in fact in a rebuild, but they are. Like, I mean, they have a ton of dead cap, and honestly, that's actually a very, like, maybe for those people, if they are, invested or looking to invest into the NFL salary cap, very good way to tell if a team is where they're at in the rankings in the NFL. I mean, the less dead cap you have, the more telling that you are a contender. Now, it doesn't go for every team, but if you're in the Philadelphia Eagles position right now, where they have a ton of dead cap right now, obviously a lot of it coming from Carson Wentz, that's a really telling sign that, if a lot of your cap dollars are being taken up by a player that's not even on your team, that is a pretty telling sign that you're probably not a contender. But in saying that, I looked at the Tankathon today, and this is something that we're going to have to really keep an eye on going forward here. Tankathon, Philadelphia currently holds 3 picks still. They hold 3 first-round picks this next year, and they at one point had, when the Indianapolis Colts were really struggling there, they had 3 top 10 picks in next year's draft. Right now, they currently hold the 3rd overall pick, which belongs to Miami, but it's now Philadelphia's. They hold the 7th overall pick, which is their own, and they hold the 14th overall pick, which is Indianapolis. Now, with all of that, man, I mean, that you have picks. We've seen numerous teams in the past few seasons, such as the Dolphins, such as the Raiders, where they have 2-3 draft picks in the first round here. The Philadelphia Eagles might be in a rebuild here, in my opinion, but they have the assets now, especially with this upcoming draft, to turn this around really quickly. Maybe before we get into this last thing that I want to ask you here, but before that, do you think that Jalen Hurts here is he the answer for the Philadelphia Eagles? No. Okay.
No. I think you have to be able to perform from the pocket in this league to be a winning quarterback. If you can do things outside of the pocket, more power to you, and it's going to help expand the offense of creating plays off script. But you need to be able to be on script in the pocket. And I just haven't seen that ability from him throughout his time in college or with the Eagles. So I think there's a ceiling on what he'll be able to achieve as a quarterback, and I just don't see him ever being able to top that upper echelon top 10 QB status.
Yeah. Okay. And I agree with you. I don't think that he's going to be a top 10 quarterback by any means. I really do hope that he continues to get a shot to be a starter going forward, though. I'm still more or less high on Jalen Hurts. I think that he's a proven winner at the college level. I think that can certainly translate to the NFL level. So I hope that he continues to get a shot here. And obviously, I don't think he's in the greatest position with a brand new head coach and with the weapons that he has, very young weapons in Philadelphia there. I don't think he's in the greatest position. So I'm going to say that hopefully he gets another chance going forward here. But let's wrap this thing up, Jesse, because you are obviously yawning and ready to go to bed here. I want to wrap it up with one other thing here with the standings. NFC, we obviously have a pretty good idea of who we're working with here. We've got the Cardinals, the Packers, Buccaneers, Cowboys, Rams. As far as we'd like to think here, the top 5 teams, and those are kind of we'd like to think they're all pretty much contenders here. I'm still not a big believer in the Saints here. I'm not buying Saints stock, and everybody else in the conference and the NFC is just not. But if you look at the AFC, on the other hand, everybody except for the Jets, Jags, Dolphins, and Texans are right in the thick of this thing. Is there anybody from the AFC that you look at and you just like absolutely not, like they are in the hunt right now? But is there any teams, or I should ask, which teams are you looking at and saying, yeah, I'm not buying it? Do you think, like, for example, the Chiefs make the playoffs?
I think they got a good shot. The way that I've seen them play the last 2 weeks, they've almost kind of morphed their identity. They're playing not very akin to how we've seen the Chiefs play. A little bit more ball control and more concerted effort to run the ball. And just allowing the big explosive plays that they have to just come naturally instead of trying to force them. And I think if they can get back to that, I think they have a pretty good shot at the playoffs. A dark horse contender for not only being a wild card team, but I think has a legitimate chance to win their division this year in the AFC that not a lot of teams are looking at, is the New England Patriots. I think what they got going on there, they haven't played any top competition yet. It's going to come up to their season series against Buffalo, I think, for who takes that division. But don't sleep on the Patriots, possibly coming back for the crown in the AFC East.
That defense is really, really, really starting to click, and like all of their additions, free agency, and I mean, Mac Jones is getting better with each and every game. Listen, he's not going to be perfect every game. He's going to make mistakes still, but he is more like at the beginning of the year, people were just so many question marks, rightfully so. He's a rookie, but there's just so many question marks. And now I'm hearing people saying this kid's the real deal. You know what I mean? All of a sudden it's just like, okay, right. Let's see him continue to progress. But New England Patriots, I agree with you. I don't think they'll be able to take over the Buffalo Bills, but I think that you're absolutely right. There's going to be some meaningful football to be played down the stretch here. Jesse, sir, thank you very much for your time. Always appreciate it. Love chopping it up with you, man, about football. And we'll have to have you on before the season ends at least one more time, man. Let you get to bed. Everybody, appreciate you tuning into the Final Drive. If you are here, if you are tuning in later, tomorrow, day after, whatever, appreciate you as well. But Jesse, man, have a good night. And we'll see you guys next week here on the Final Drive.
Raiders.